What's up, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for another Conspiracy on the Staircase. I am your host, Nathan, and with me today is a very special guest and friend of the podcast, Cade. What's going on, man?
What's going on, dude? Happy to be here. I'm excited. I believe this is my second time returning to the show. I was on Staircase for an episode, so I'm excited about conspiracies because I haven't done it yet.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, filling in for the spot of Nick, who couldn't be here today.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. What's been going on with you?
Well, the only thing I can really say is the Batman. Ooh. Finally got to see it. Yeah, not my favorite movie. I will say that. I need to see it again. I only saw it once, but yeah, I know you saw it. I know you saw it twice. What did you think?
I've seen it twice. Yes. Dude, to be honest with you, I think I may be a little obsessed with it. I loved it. This Batman movie with Robert Pattinson as a whole, I think is just. It felt like Batman to me more than any other movie. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, the whole film noir aspect of it and everything, that's what was beautiful about it. I mean, dude, I don't think there was a single person cast in that movie that I didn't like. True.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, everyone nailed it. I think everybody nailed that. But yeah, man, and the Riddler.
Yeah, they modeled him after famous serial killers like the Zodiac Killer. So that was pretty cool to see. So without further ado, you want to get into this wild conspiracy I have for you today?
Let's do it, man.
All right. So sit back, and that's going to be pretty easy for you. You're coming off of surgery, aren't you?
Yes, I had surgery a couple of days ago, so my foot's all wrapped up and propped up. And because of that, I have officially, and I hadn't told you this, I have officially completely watched my first Harry Potter movie ever.
Oh! Dang! For people unaware, Cade does not like Harry Potter, doesn't like magic, kind of in particular.
Okay, well, hold on. We got to be a little more specific with that, because I do like magic, man.
Wait. Which one? Which one did you watch?
The first one. I started with number 1.
Okay.
I got to start with number 1. I mean, I can't.
You got to start with number 1.
Yeah, I can't skip ahead. There's no way I could do that. But the thing about Harry Potter, dude, you don't know how pissed I'd be if I was a wizard. Like, I found out I was going to get to go to Hogwarts and all that. But, dude, I suck at studying. I hate having to read books and remember things. So there's a scene in the first one, and they're all 3 stuck in these, like, vine-like things. And Hermione has to do a little spell to get Ron through, and she can't remember it. So in that moment, it would have never came to me. My boy Ron would have died because I didn't pay attention in class that day. I didn't get the words right. I was holding my wand the wrong way.
But see, that's why they had Hermione.
Oh, she's a boss, man. She's a boss. No doubt about it. It's just always been hard for me to get into Harry Potter because like all other wizards like Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, I think he's freaking awesome, but to me, that's a different type of wizard. I don't know. You're the professional here. Is Gandalf the same type of wizard as Harry?
But you said I'm a expert, and now I'm like, oh gosh.
You're my expert.
I would say yes.
I would think so. Like, okay, so did he have to go to a school? I know every wizard, I guess, has to study their spells and everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key. Every wizard has to read some sort of spell book. So there's some sort of book, and that's basically what school is.
And that's where you lose me.
So are you going to watch another one?
I'm going to keep it going because I do want to know what's up with Voldemort. He's always what's been intriguing to me about the movies, but so I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to go. I'm going to get on number 2 tonight.
Well, hey, there you go. Well, I'm happy to hear that. Well, it kind of got us a little derailed, but it's Harry Potter, so it's always worth it. So sit back. Again, it's going to be pretty easy with you, as your foot doesn't work right now. Listen to this unbelievable story that Netflix actually just bought the film rights to, and they plan on releasing an episodic retelling of the case later this year. This is the infamous unsolved case of the Watcher. You ever heard of it?
Nope.
Okay, let's get into it. In June 2014, married couple Derek and Maria Broaddus purchased their dream home on the highly coveted Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey. 657 Boulevard to be exact. This particular street was the street to live on. If you lived here, you had made it. The home valued at $1.3 million, a pretty large shift from their previous $300,000 home. The Broadduses also had 3 young children and could not be happier to start their new life at this new home. However, soon this picture-perfect family would begin to experience true psychological horror.
So did the dad get a promotion or something to go from, what'd you say, a 300,000 to a 1 point something million?
That's a good question.
That's a conspiracy right there. I mean, how's somebody gonna go like something changed? Okay, something changed.
They had just closed on the house 3 days previously, so Derek wanted to get a jump on some of the improvements they had planned on making to their new home. He decided to start painting the walls their new color, and after he had finished, maybe out of habit, he decided to check the mail. However, there was only one single card-shaped envelope inside. Derek opened it and began to read. Quote, "How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Why are you here? I will find out." End quote. The letter would go on to identify the vehicle the family drove and the fact that they had contractors steadily working on the property. Quote, "I see already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. You have children. I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted."
Yeah, I'm immediately probably just gonna move.
You're right.
At that moment. I mean, that's just hitting too many details. Somebody's creeping.
Yeah, so the letter goes on. The anonymous author would go on to ask if they had plans for having more children. Quote, "Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested?" Insinuating that the previous owners had been requested to bring the writer of the letter the children. Quote, "Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me." And here is where the letter really gets terrifying. "Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one." End quote.
That's just a dick move. I mean, that's just straight telling the man that you're threatening or whatever this guy's doing, that he's just telling him, I'm here. I'm right here. You know,
He's playing a game with them. He's playing this psychological game with this family. So the letter would actually end with this ominous message. Quote, "Welcome, my friends. Welcome. Let the party begin. Signed, the Watcher." End quote. So he already signs it off with this anonymous, kind of threatening title of the Watcher. I mean, man, that's just the creepiest thing. You feel safe in your own home, and now you move into this new home, and all of a sudden you're already being threatened, your children. They're talking about your children. They're saying young bloods. That's some weird language to be using, you know?
Young blood.
That's exactly what I thought of too. I thought, maybe they're being kind of cool. What up, young blood? But I don't know. It doesn't.
Hey, man, I see you got 3 young bloods over there. All right. Did I ever tell you that in my high school that one of the basketball coaches' name was Youngblood?
That was his actual name?
Every time I saw him, Coach Youngblood. You can't help it.
That's weird. What would you do if you got this letter? What's the first thing you're doing?
Jeez, man, I don't know. Like, I mean, you'd probably go straight to the cops to start off with because it's too detailed. It's the guy is too brave. I mean, he's just straight up telling them what's going on.
Yeah.
And even if it were a joke or something, at this moment, you don't know that, so you got to, I don't know, I think you got to play it safe. I'd probably just go to the cops just to immediately be like, hey, look, this is what's going on. This is where we are. Just in case anything goes down, this was the first step, and like, I guess more of protecting yourself too, if you think about it.
Yeah, definitely, dude. So Derek instantly ran back inside of the empty house. It was already after 10 p.m., so he turned off every light in fear that the author of the letter was still watching him. He called the police, who arrived within minutes, and after showing the officer the letter, the officer simply replied, and I quote, "What the fuck is this?" End quote. Of course, this came with the usual questions of, do you have any enemies? Or do you know anyone capable of writing something like this? To which Derek was absolutely clueless. Derek decided to rush back home to his wife and children elsewhere in Westfield, and that night, he and Maria wrote to the previous owners of the home, John and Andrea Woods, to ask if they knew anything about this odd letter, or if they had in fact been requested to find a buyer who had children. The Woodses would respond the following day to confirm that they did in fact receive a letter by someone also signed The Watcher. However, this letter, although odd, did more to thank the Woods for their time in the home and that it would continue to be in good hands than it did to scare the Woods off. The Woods claimed to have never received any kind of letters like that in the 23 years of living on the boulevard. So they threw the letter away and thought nothing more about it. The Woodses would go with Maria to the police station, where Detective Leonard Lugo told her and the Woodses not to tell anyone about the letters, including her new neighbors, most of whom she had never met, and all of whom were now suspects.
I was going to say that's weird until he said they're all suspects. Yeah, that makes sense. I was like, oh, no, he in on it. He guilty, bro. No, but he right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, do you think that the Woodses are,
the biggest difference I see between the previous owners and the new owners is, you said the new owners, right when they moved in, they started doing some remodeling or something. I wonder if the previous owners ever did that. Sounds like they didn't, because their letter sounded nice, I guess you could say. Like, they weren't changing the house, so they were cool with it, I guess.
Right. But it's also like, yeah, but we don't have the letter. So yeah, of course we got one, but we don't have it anymore. That could also be a little suspicious.
Did they have children?
I don't believe so.
And that he needs that young blood, so maybe that's why he didn't worry about them.
He needs that young blood. Over the next couple of weeks, the Broadduses were on high alert, as expected. Derek canceled an upcoming work trip, and every time Maria would bring the kids to the new home, she would call their names when they would run off too far in fear of someone watching them. Derek had given a tour to a couple on the block, and he actually froze when the wife made the comment, quote, "It'll be nice to have some young blood in the neighborhood," end quote.
Suspicious, man. Suspicious.
Not good.
Nobody says young blood like that.
Not good.
I mean, nobody just uses...
That's such an odd word to say. Well, okay, so it's definitely like an older person's...
Yeah, oh, for sure.
...language, yeah. I would think. So this is a sentence that Derek would have never have given too much thought of before, but after that letter, obviously, young blood's high alert. About a week after the letter had arrived, the Broadduses had attended a neighborhood barbecue. I don't even know why they would have gone to a barbecue after all of this, but whatever. They attended a barbecue. And because they hadn't spoke to anyone about the letters, they did everything they could to observe the surrounding neighbors, just to see if they could kind of, pick up any creepiness from any of their, neighbors. Even the general contractor of the new home noticed strange things occurring. He had just put up a large construction sign that required great effort to stake into the ground the night previously. But the next morning when he returned, it had been ripped up and thrown in the middle of the yard. So think about that. This took some serious work to get this sign to the ground. The next morning just yanked up. That tells me I don't want you here. That's kind of for real.
They don't want the house changing.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of Monster House, a little bit. You seen that movie?
I was thinking the same thing. I love that movie, Monster House.
It's a good one.
But yeah, it's like the house is alive and it don't, yeah.
At least that's what the Watcher is making it seem like, that there's something seriously odd about this house. Exactly 2 weeks had gone by with no word from the Watcher. That is, until Maria stopped by the house to look at more paint samples. She checked the mail and instantly felt horror grip her soul. She recognized the thick black lettering on a card-shaped envelope. Within the letter, both Maria and Derek had both been addressed directly. However, their names were misspelt. The Watcher boasted of having learned a lot about the family in the last 2 weeks, especially in regards to the children, even naming and addressing their nicknames all by birth order, the ones Maria had been yelling in the yard.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Yeah. The letter asked about one child in particular, whom the writer had seen using an easel, and she was painting inside an enclosed porch. So whoever had view to this house had pretty
good binoculars.
Yeah. So this is the contents of the letter. Quote, I am pleased to know your names and the young bloods you have brought me. You certainly say their names often. 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be if I were them. It is very far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. All of the windows and doors in 657 allow me to watch and track you. Who am I? I am the Watcher and have been in control of 657 for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on, and kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you are too, Bradis family. That's where they misspelled Bradis. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy moving day. You know I will be watching. End quote.
You said greed brought the other 3?
That's what the Watcher claims.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, it's a $1.3 million home. So
it's starting to sound like the house is talking in the first person. Like the house.
It's the Watcher speaking in regards to the house being like an entity or something like that.
Yeah.
So obviously, whoever's writing these also knows a little bit about the layout of the home, because he's talking about the basement and he knows how far the basement is from the upstairs rooms, and you know what kind of sounds could be heard. So he definitely has some, or he or she definitely has some sort of knowledge on this home. So understandably, the Broduses would not bring their children back to their new home again. Several weeks later, a third letter arrived. This is what the letter said, quote, where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you, end quote. With hardly anything the police could do, Derek began his own investigation. He staked outside of his own home. He set up cameras and hid behind bushes in hopes of catching the Watcher. Now, would you do something like this?
Yeah, in a heartbeat.
You know, I mean, this would be like first thing you do, right? I mean, no one wants to stake out your house. I'm going to stay out there all day long. I'm going to clock every single person who walks by. I'm going to take note of every car that drives by. This guy is spot on. This is exactly what I would do.
Yeah. Sometimes I daydream about doing that stuff. So, no doubt.
Just for fun.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So he would actually hire several experts to help with the case. And one of the people that he hired, this is so cool, he hired former FBI agent who served as the inspiration for Clarice Starling in the Silence of the Lambs film.
Oh.
They went to school together. So that's pretty cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah. Additionally, they also hired Robert Lenahan, another former FBI agent, to conduct an assessment test on the letters. And these are his findings. The letters had a certain literary panache, which suggested a voracious reader. He noticed several old-fashioned ticks in the letters that pointed to an older writer. He found the lack of profanity to be particularly telling, given the level of anger in the letters. which could lend credence to a quote-unquote less macho writer. Lenehan didn't think the Watcher was likely to act on the threats, but the letters had enough typos and errors to imply a certain erraticism. The first letter was dated Tuesday, June 4th, but that day was actually a Wednesday. Additionally, ex-Westfield detective Chambliss looked into the case. He discovered something even more surprising. Investigators had eventually conducted a DNA analysis on one of the envelopes and determined that the DNA had actually belonged to a woman. So that actually lent a lot of credence to the quote-unquote less macho kind of feel that this agent was getting from the letters.
They got all that from a letter?
Well, they had a few letters now at this point.
Well, yeah, that's true, but...
So they were able to kind of build some sort of profile of this writer.
That's insane. That's insane that they can sit there. I mean, I know you got to be gifted and into that, but like, no, you give me that letter, there's no way I'd come to any conclusion like that. I'd just be like, you got to move, man. I don't know who it is.
The case would go cold for 2 solid years. The Broadduses would have a really hard time renting out their home, but would finally get it rented out to an elderly couple. And one day, while the elderly couple was living in the home, they had experienced some squirrels in the attic, so they called Derek over to try to help get rid of those. And upon arriving, he was handed another card-shaped envelope from one of his new tenants. This is what the letter said, quote, "Violent winds and bitter cold, to the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria. You wonder who the Watcher is? Turn around, idiots. Maybe you even spoke to me, one of the so-called neighbors who has no idea who the Watcher could be. Or maybe you do know and are too scared to tell anyone. Good move. I walked by the news trucks when they took over my neighborhood and mocked me. I watched as you watched from the dark house in an attempt to find me. Telescopes and binoculars are wonderful inventions. 657 Boulevard survived your attempted assault and stood strong with its army of supporters barricading its gates. My soldiers of the Boulevard followed my orders to a T. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher." So this is actually in reference to the Broaddus family attempted to sell their home into 2 plots of land. So their land was actually almost big enough to have 2 plots sitting on it. And the idea was that, okay, we'll sell our plot of land, we'll destroy the house, and we can build 2 new houses on here, and we'll sell it and we'll get out from under it. Well, the community said, no, we're not going to do that. They were like 3 feet too short of up to code. So the community said, no, we're not going to do that. So the Watcher is actually claiming that it was his group of people that stood strong and we determined not to have this house be demolished. The letter indicated revenge could come in many forms. Quote, maybe a car accident, maybe a fire. Maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away, but makes you feel sick day after day after day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet. Loved ones suddenly die. Planes and cars and bicycles crash. Bones break. End quote. So obviously the letters like amp up. You're calling them idiots.
That's what I was about to say. He or she, it's like they hit a nerve on this one because they were coming in hard on that one, I thought.
Yeah, they got her a wench. I mean...
A wench, that was the one, yes.
Man, that old school language, it's like...
Have you ever called somebody a wench? I don't think I've ever called anybody a wench.
I think I've called a wrench a wench when on accident before I when my dad's yelling at me for a tool.
Well, I've never called anybody a wench, but I tell you, I'm bringing it back. I think I want that one to come back.
Yeah, I mean, it's like not that bad. You'll just confuse people, I think, more than anything.
Oh, definitely. It's going to make them think about themselves. Like if you called somebody a wench, it would catch them off guard and they would hesitate for a second. Like nobody's ready for that. No.
So let's get into some of the theories. The first theory posited was during the first week after the first letter, a car dropped off a young man at home late at night on the Broadduses street. The police pulled the person over, who turned out to be a woman, and questioned her regarding the young man who exited her car. She said that she didn't know anything about the letters and that was actually her boyfriend who exited the vehicle. One noteworthy item she had mentioned was the fact that her boyfriend had become obsessed with a game in which he was referred to as the Watcher. Even stranger, after the police had attempted to set up 2 different meetings with him, he never showed to either. Now, I don't put too much stock into this theory. The main reason being there is an extremely popular video game called The Witcher. Incidentally, is also on Netflix. It's probably more likely that she was either misquoted or she misquoted the name of the game. That's what I think. What do you think?
No, I can see that, but also, didn't you say there were some mistakes in some of the letters?
Yes, there were.
So if this lady's already making mistakes with what she think her boyfriend plays, then she's making mistakes in the letters. I think that's, I mean, I get where you're coming from, but the fact that she's making mistakes everywhere is, to me, kind of points it towards her a little bit. Just a little bit, I think.
So you think that maybe she wrote it or that maybe he wrote it because maybe there is a Watcher thing that he's affiliated with, and maybe she's the female DNA they found on the letter.
Yeah.
That's a possibility. He never showed up for, his meetings with the police. That's a little sketch. So maybe. Let's move on to our second theory. The second theory comes from one of the painters. The couple living behind 657 Boulevard kept a pair of lawn chairs strangely close to the Broaddus' property line. He said, quote, "One day I was looking out the window and I saw this older guy sitting in one of the chairs. He wasn't facing his own house, he was facing the Broaddus' house." End quote. However, this is as far as the investigation would go with those neighbors.
Yeah, that's not that suspicious to me, especially if it's some old dude and he's watching his neighbor's house that's being worked on. He's just intrigued, I think, by the actual work, the construction that's going on. He's bored.
Yeah.
So that's not that weird to me.
But it is like, just like kind of like a ramblings of like an older person, it kind of seems like. And this person has like perfect view into their home the whole time. He's watching everything. I mean,
yeah,
kind of strange. But you're right. I mean, if there was more to that, I think it would be investigated maybe a little bit more. Our third and most likely theory is at one point, Derek was chatting with his neighbor, John Schmidt, who lived 2 doors down, when Schmidt told him about the Langfords, who lived between them. Peggy Langford was in her 90s, and several of her adult children, all in their 60s, lived with her. The family was a bit odd, Schmidt said, but harmless. He described one of the younger Langfords, Michael, who didn't work and had a beard like Ernest Hemingway, as, quote, kind of a Boo Radley character, end quote. I don't know if you know Boo Radley from To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay, I was about to say, don't come at me, bro. I know okay. Boo Radley. Okay, we all read that book in middle school. Come on, man.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure Robert Duvall played him, right?
I don't know. Robert Redford.
No, Duvall.
So Michael was actually known to kind of like be creepy around the neighborhood. Like he was known for like looking in through people's windows and walking through their yards and stuff like that. But for the most part, people thought that he was kind of like helpful. Like he would bring in my newspaper or he helped me look for my cat and, kind of things like that. So he wasn't really like much of a suspect to anybody else. But to Derek, he thought the case was solved. He thought it was Michael. The Langford house was right next to the easel on the porch, which the author had mentioned seeing a child painting on. The family had lived there since the 1960s, when the Watcher's father, the letter said, had begun observing 657 Boulevard, and Richard Langford, the family patriarch, had died 12 years earlier, and the current Watcher claimed to have been on the job for the better part of 2 decades. So Derek was like, this is clearly the guy. I mean, he's right next door. Everything adds up. So he thought that was a shoo-in. Well, when the Broadduses told Detective Lugo about the family, he said that he had already knew about Michael, and a week after the first letter arrived, he brought Michael down to the station and they had an interview. Michael denied knowing anything about the letters, but the Broadduses say that Lugo told them that, quote, the narrative, unquote, of what he said matched things mentioned in the letters. So that's kind of weird. Like he denied it, but some of the stuff he was saying was kind of matching up with some of the letters. However, Lugo would say, quote, this isn't CSI Westfield. When the wife is dead, it's the husband, end quote. The Broadduses also claimed that Detective Lugo told them that after talking to Michael, the letters would end. So that was kind of weird. Like, why would you say like, oh, don't worry, the letters are going to come to an end? It almost seemed like, oh, maybe there was something a little bit more to that whole interview. Maybe he said something to the detective that made him feel like the letters would come to an end. However, the letters wouldn't end. So I tend to think that it's a little unlikely that the letters would continue and it's Michael, and Michael had just been talked to by the police. That seems kind of far-fetched to me.
Yeah, you would think he would want to lay low just for a little bit.
Exactly. That's what I would think. But what if the Langfords were involved? What if the 90-year-old mother of Michael was actually the culprit? What if her old-fashioned language was a reflection of her age? What if the quote-unquote less macho quality of the letters pointed towards the feeble woman she was? The DNA on the letter was determined to be female after all. Could she have Michael leave the letters in the mailbox when she was sure no one was watching? Maybe the police knew who it was, but knew the ramblings of a 90-year-old woman would be ultimately harmless.
I just figured the whole thing out.
Go.
It was her, man. I mean, think about it. She's 90 years old. She's been living in this neighborhood the whole time. This new family comes in, doing construction on the house. It's too much noise in the neighborhood. She's just trying to relax and watch her stories on the television. And now they got these 3 young bloods running around the yard, making all the noise. She can't stand none of them. So what she do? She gets her boy, who's in his 60s. She just tries to scare him out of the house. Nailed it.
Yeah, lines up, right? They talk to Michael, some things. Oh, don't worry, the letters will stop. Like, stop, tell your mom to stop. Stop sending out these letters. And she's like, no, I'm not going to stop. All right. So I think that's the most likely theory, but I'm going to leave you with one more theory. So finally, our last theory is that maybe, just maybe, it was the Broadduses who conjured this elaborate scheme. The home was extremely expensive. It's possible Derek could have sent the letters to the woods ahead of time and continued the letters in hopes of being able to get out from under their new purchase. This could explain some of the knowledge the author had in describing the layout of the home and the personal knowledge of the children. I mean, like you said, how does someone go from a $300,000 home to a $1.3 million house? However, based on the actions of the Broadduses, this theory honestly just doesn't really make sense. It was an expensive move, and the delay made things even worse financially. They also claimed of the emotional stress they endured as being something they would, quote, never wish on anyone, end quote. Now, it would be a disservice for me to not mention this little detail, and this is going to sound really strange. So after the final letter was received, the watcher was no longer the only person sending anonymous letters in Westfield. On Christmas Eve, several families received an envelope in their mailboxes. They'd been delivered by hand to the homes of people who had been the most vocal in criticizing the Broadduses online. People who were saying, no, it was the Broadduses who actually sent these letters and they're lying about everything and they just want like a crazy story for like a TV deal. That's what all these theories were starting to come up about them. So all these people started to receive all of these letters. One of them, who lived a few blocks down on Boulevard, had written on Facebook saying, quote, I wish we could go back to the days of tar and feathers. I have just a couple in mind, end quote. Like
Dang, that's harsh.
Yeah, people did not like the Broadduses. They were like, no, it was the Broadduses. They were the crazy ones. We didn't have any crazy letters until they moved in. Another family who got the letter said that it was, quote, weirdly poetic, end quote, as the watchers had been, and that it accused the families of speculating inaccurately about the Broadduses. It included several stories about recent acts of domestic terrorism in which signs of brewing mental illness had gone unnoticed. The type letters were signed, quote, Friends of the Broaddus Family, end quote. So these letters were trying to say, like, what about this neighbor over here? What about this neighbor over here? Look around at everyone else. Like, there's obviously more domestic violence going on at other people's homes, stranger things going on at other people's homes besides just the Broadduses. So when Derek Broaddus was asked whether he had written them, he paused for a moment, and then he admitted that he had, in fact, written those letters. He wasn't proud of it, and he hadn't even told his wife. He said that they were the only anonymous letters that he had written. But he had felt driven to his wits' end, fed up with watching silently as people threw accusations at his family based on practically nothing. Derek would finally go on to reveal the final words of the final letter that he received. Quote, "You are despised by the house, and the Watcher won." End quote. It's kind of interesting that the Watcher had this obsession with this house, and then he almost passed it on to Derek, and Derek became obsessed with the Watcher. So that is the crazy unsolved case of the Watcher. Not a lot of crime happened in this one, not as much murder as, some of our other conspiracies have been, but this was a true psychological mind game that this guy had enacted on this family.
This one, the thing that would drive you crazy about this one is it's making you always look over your shoulder.
Exactly.
And that's a slow burn, and that would drive you crazy. I wouldn't want to live like that. That would, ugh.
Yeah, involving your children into the mix. I mean, at the end of the year, there's going to be a Netflix show come out about this case, and so who knows what kind of spin they'll put on it, who they might pin to be, the actual Watcher. It'll be interesting to see if any of these theories that we talked about here made it to the show. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's going to be cool to see. Definitely.
Well, guys, that is our episode for you this week. Don't forget to check out more of our conspiracies on our channel. We have so many still to come that we can't wait to show you guys. We still have Staircase Stories coming out. And that's coming out real soon. And Cade, you're actually going to be a part of that again. You're going to be doing some more voice work for us. So we super appreciate that. Anything you want to say before I let us go?
Peggy. It was Peggy, man. I'm telling you. Peggy Langford, the old lady, she just didn't want them around. That's my verdict. It makes sense.
Well, let's hope that this year, when we see the case of the Watcher, we'll peg Peggy. Wow.
Yeah, we pegged her.
Peggy.
We're pegging her. Whoa,
we'll peg Peggy as
what? I don't know.
As the Watcher. Well, we won't peg Peggy, but we're going to peg Peggy as the, we're just going to stop saying peg all the way around. We're just going to say that's peg.
I'm calling it the last shot of the series. It's a wide shot panning out, and Peggy standing in her window, smoking a cigarette, with her big old binoculars, watching everything. I'm telling you, Peggy did it.
And where's Boo Radley?
And Robert Duvall is there somewhere.
Robert Duvall. Well, thank you so much, Cade, for joining me on the Staircase, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.
Deuces.